You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me once again, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. Happy New Year, everyone out there.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and so listen, I'm just going to dive right in. This is how I wanted to start the show today.
Okay.
And you don't know, we didn't talk about this. I was really hoping about halfway through the week.
Okay.
I was like, man, I'm going to get to come on the show. We're going to get to talk about a team that's rolling, won a bunch of games. Here we go. We're in a playoff spot because the Flyers were for a minute technically in a playoff spot on tiebreakers. I'll take it. And then about 12 seconds into Saturday night's game, Victor Arvidsson went just dropped his drawers and dumped a big old deuce on it 12 seconds into the game. As the 7-game point streak snapped, but, you know, we do have some stuff to talk about before we get into Saturday night's game, including games 6 and 7 of the streak. So is that where you want to start? You want to start on Wednesday night or Tuesday night?
Wednesday night.
Or Wednesday
yeah,
night.
You got it right. You know what? No, here's the thing. Everybody thought it was Wednesday night or Tuesday night because that's when everything came back.
Right. The Flyers didn't play on the first night back.
Well, and the thing was that everything, I almost feel like I need to explain the way that my Tuesday went, not this past Tuesday, but the Tuesday before.
Okay.
When everybody woke up in the morning and thought there was a game that night, and if you were in the Philly area and maybe had tickets to said game or whatever, that you were going to be competing with Eagles traffic that night because the Eagles game was postponed and all that crazy stuff. And I got up that morning. I didn't have the heftiest work day in front of me or anything like that. So I had time. One of the things I had time to do was 97.3 at Christmas time does a state of the teams thing, and we pre-record it. So that was the gap. And I was set to go. I forget what time exactly we were supposed to start, but it got pushed back a couple minutes. So I was looking at 11:15, something like that. And by the time I was done recording and literally trying to talk my way through hypotheticals, if you will, because we already knew that Thursday was off by that point.
Right.
I'm talking myself through hypotheticals. I'm saying things like 5-game point streak when I don't know if that's going to be true because there is technically a game that night and it's against a team like the Washington Capitals. So good luck.
There's all sorts of uncertainty for sure.
Right. And all that. And by the time that I literally was getting off the call and right before I got off, because I'm doing it with the main host, Mike Gill, and I basically turned around and I even said, because he said something about, he actually asked to confirm 7 o'clock Caps, right? And I turned and said, actually, don't, stand by.
Maybe.
I'm being I'm reading that it might be off right now. I'm not, and I'm drafting a story as starting to draft. I'm getting off and drafting a story
as we speak, right?
Pretty much, exactly. And before I could even get the draft finished, it was over.
No.
I saw, I forget who it was from the Cap side who tweeted something, but basically said John Carlson just came out in street clothes and said, "We're going home."
Oof.
And said it to 5 people still on the ice for Washington.
Right.
Hey, get off the ice. We're done.
Hey,
it's over.
Go home for Christmas. Right.
Which, hey, I'll take it because then I spent from the rest of Tuesday on, I had half of a preview completed because I didn't know anything yet about Washington's lineup or anything like that. And I got to take, what's that at that point? 3.5 days off before Christmas hit, and then a couple more after the fact because there wasn't much of a practice on Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday were pretty limited type stuff too. And then even when the game, the hard part of these late games is not when they start, it's when they end. The lead up is actually not that bad to me.
Right. Well, and in case you missed it, by the way, the NHL ended up pausing their activities from December 21st through December 27th due to the COVID outbreak. Something like 70, 80, 90 games were postponed. I think we're up to 90 now.
It's a little skewed because of the fact that there was 5 previous already. So in the grand scheme of what's happening right now, I think it's something like 85.
Right. But either way, just a large number of games ended up having to get moved. And
I believe that at its peak, because it's really come down lately. but at its peak, there was something like 130, 140 players in protocol at one time.
And even though the numbers are coming down, it seems like 2 or 3 guys are still getting added to the list every day. Guys are coming off the list faster than they're going on, for sure.
Yeah, it's the ratio, and
but it's definitely not over.
And it's the change too. It's the change from basically at the beginning of all of this, it was you were on for 10 days, and that was the end of that. And now there's some flexibility. You can test out. It's become like every other sport,
Right.
Because let's put it this way: in the Flyers' case, they've played the entire road trip to this point without a lot of people, but specifically no Carter Hart, no Scott Lawton, no Derek Brassard, who was possible for the previous Thursday in Pittsburgh.
And those 3 guys, by the way, might join the team, or will be joining the team for Tuesday in Anaheim.
Exactly, and it's cool to actually hear the wording be they tested out of it, which means good, great.
I mean, they don't have it
right
now.
Well, in Hart's situation, it's just crazy because Hart was too ill to play on the Saturday before, which ended up being the last game prior to this pause.
But they specifically said not COVID for that.
Well, not only did they say that, I don't know if it was the next day, they might have had off on the Sunday, but on Monday when practice resumed before the Washington game, he was on the ice then. He was on the ice ahead of the game against Washington that was still on until noon that day. So he was going to play, I think.
Yep.
So everything was lined up that he was going to go and be ready. And then that quickly, there was no game that night. And now what do you do? So and then that quickly they come back from this break, and you're just kind of sitting there holding your breath at that point because you're going, who's going to be added, who's not? It's pretty inevitable. Somebody, you just told everybody, as much as you could sit there and say, listen, everybody stopped practicing and going to team facilities and all that stuff for 5 days. Nobody said don't spend the holiday with your family. So that risk was always there, and it was, to be honest, it wasn't as bad as it probably could have been, because
that's true.
Well, because I guess in the grand scheme of things too, when you double up on it's guys who were injured who also can't test, that they can't rehab, if you will, I guess is what it is. So when Ryan Ellis goes on the list, or even when Brassard goes on the list, because Brassard just got an extra week to be ready, I don't see how that hurts.
Right.
Or whatever. Or even take a guy like Kevin Hayes, who was on the list but never missed a game. Went on the list ahead of that Tuesday game, was not going to play. Game got called off anyway. And by the time they were back ready to play again, he was off the list.
Right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, what's that?
He scored last night, right?
He did last night, yeah.
So there you go. He picked up a goal.
Yeah, that was, and here's the thing, good goal at the time, was a gutsy play. We'll get into that more when we get to the specific game.
Yeah.
But it didn't do anything to the end result there at all. So,
Well, and I do also want to mention that we are recording this on Sunday, January 2nd, and we haven't.
There's no news.
Well, we haven't seen the results from guys who might have gone out for New Year's Eve, let's say. So we're not necessarily out of the woods in terms of testing.
For them, it's going to be nobody from that, because because on the road you've been told don't go anywhere.
No, I know for the Flyers. I just mean kind of across the league. I'd be curious. We're not necessarily out of the woods in terms of getting over the holidays.
I think there was a care to it, because let's put it this way. Look, true, nothing's going to really show up when you have a game on New Year's Day although those players wouldn't have done anything crazy if they got a game on New Year's Day. There's no way. And it one of the things for me that I thought was really, and I'm going to touch on this game again a little bit later on when we talk about the other Flyers games too.
Yeah.
From a stylistic standpoint anyway. But it almost feels wrong to call it this, but it was, I don't even know if this is the right way to call it. The Winter Classic was on at 7:00 on New Year's Day, and it's, I don't know, was it perfect appetizer to lead into the Flyers, or is it the main course and then the Flyers are the dessert after the whole thing, or however you want to look at
The
it?
Flyers were not dessert the way they played last night, but that's okay.
Well, and that's why I didn't want to call the Winter Classic the appetizer either, because it sounds like you're waiting for something bigger and better. That's the big event of the day, and it was done real. It looked like it was done really well. It looked
And
cool.
it looked cold.
It was cold. I'm sure. I saw that temperature keep flashing up on the screen, but
you heard that they had to heat the ice.
Yeah,
to keep
but that's
it from freezing up during the resurfacing process.
Yeah, but that's not as bad as like the water bottles freezing up and needing to have a literally basically like one that was made into a thermos so that Jordan Binnington could drink chicken broth during the game.
Yep.
And what was the other one? Oh, and seeing pictures of like guys' beards are freezing over.
Yeah, that was wild.
That
was in warm-ups.
Yeah.
They skated around for 10 or 15 minutes in warm-ups, and they got that frosty. It was crazy.
Right. So that's why I don't want to call it like an appetizer, because it was much. I mean, the game was kind of a dud in the grand scheme of things, because it was a blowout in the second period. But it was nonetheless. It's those games are entertaining. Like let's this way. Did we not watch the Lake Tahoe game and go look at what the roster looks like? This is not a surprise result, but the setting was kind of cool, so stick with it.
Man, just the roster that played in that Lake Tahoe game. Oof.
Well, stuff like that is why I can't really sympathize for any team that comes out with the 11 forward, 5 defenseman thing or whatever. Like, I'm not saying it makes it right, but you already set the precedent a year ago, and that was when it wasn't even that much of it still wasn't even that much of a thing as it is now. Like, to an extent, you know what I mean? Like, there weren't that many players in protocol last year as compared to this year to say, who cares? You have a shortened roster. Like, we're seeing it now even more than we did then. And back then, it was just get your minors up and
deal with it
and trudge forward, because
that's what your taxi squad's for,
right? And which is also why they brought those back, which is a good,
is a fantastic little move.
And then I think
NHL.
the other, before we get off of this topic and actually get into the games, I think the other piece that we have to talk about is that little second portion beyond the pause portion of this banner, because this is what this was. Yep. This is what this was for. It was labeled as a blank slate to have an opportunity that if something like this happened, exactly like this happened, it was going to be over, and they weren't going to send players over to the Olympics, and they were going to make up the games.
I believe the phrase in the CBA was material damage to the schedule. And once they announced the pause right before Christmas, the NHL had the ammunition they needed to say, well, there's been material damage to the schedule. We're pulling the plug on it. And I think they announced it as a joint agreement or whatever, but
they did. Not everybody was thrilled with it, obviously.
The NHL pulled the plug on it.
Well, I don't know that the Players Association itself didn't agree. There's certain players within who strongly disagreed with the decision in terms of, I should be allowed to do whatever I want. I'll forfeit the pay. I'll put my team at risk. I don't care. I want to go.
There's a non-zero chance Alexander Ovechkin hops on a plane and deals with the consequences later.
I don't know. Like, everybody it's funny. I know everybody thinks that. Brad Marchand was the one who came out and said it.
He was very vocal
and put it out there. But I don't doubt that Ovechkin's thinking it, but I also don't think that Ovechkin's going to look at what the league decided to do and look at, where's their team right now? They're in the top 5. Do you look at a team in the top 5 of the standings and say, you know what? I got to keep going for it? I mean, let's just the guy also just set the NHL record for power play goals and
gold medal.
I know. But
gold
what?
Medal.
As much as I don't disagree with you, it's like in 4 years.
I mean, he'll play in 2026 for sure.
He could retire from the NHL in 2 years and still decide, I'm going to the Olympics. As a matter of fact, that might almost be
that might be his
least
plan.
Resistance.
Well, see, the problem is he just signed that 5-year contract. I don't know.
No, I know. I'm saying he could have a reason to retire in 2 years, halfway through that contract, and still at his age say, I'm going to the Olympics.
If he retires with 840 goals or something like that,
oh, there's
it's
no.
such a shame.
It's not going to happen. The only way it's going to happen is, let's put it this way, if he has to retire prior to setting that record, because it's going to happen.
What if it comes down to, what do you want to do? Do you want to set the record, or do you want to play in the Olympics?
He won't face that problem.
Okay. You think he beats it before that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I agree, especially the way he's playing this year.
I was say the guy's not on a 50-goal pace this year for nothing. Like,
no.
He's essentially already, based on the way he's playing right now, and at what, 35, 36, he's essentially already making a statement that you all thought that all he needed to do was average 30 a year to break the record in his 5-year contract. And he's sitting here going, screw that, I'm going to average 50 a year.
My favorite thing about Alexander Ovechkin, especially watching him age, is that at least once a year, he scores a goal, and they show the ISO cam footage of him afterward, and he stood still for like 15 seconds before the goal, and all he did was he calls for it. He's just standing still. He's not striding. He's not going anywhere. He's certainly not thinking anything about defense.
What?
And then they pass to him, and boom, it's in, and it's over. Goal.
Here's the
at
truth.
Least once a year.
Okay, at least once a year it happens, sure. But
Yeah.
but he actually over the last like 2 to 3 years has become a better defensive player.
I agree.
More dedicated to it at least. And can you
But
blame?
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but can you also blame the guy who has what was the number? 275
the best
power
goal
play
scorer
goals?
in NHL history.
Well, he's the best power play goal scorer in NHL history now for sure. He set that record.
Past Dave Andrechuk.
I mean, what's his total at? He's at what, 754 now?
Something like that. He's getting up there. So before we get off the COVID thing, one more thing I did want to mention while we're talking about hockey being canceled is the World Juniors actually were canceled mid-tournament, which is strange.
There's a lot.
There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot of issues with that. So first of all, the World Juniors was managed as poorly as it gets because of the fact that they literally allowed.
They didn't isolate the players.
Here's what I don't get. Okay, there's absolutely zero reason, even in COVID time, that a 10-day tournament, literally, that's all it is.
Right.
Yes, there's prelims, but realistically, the bulk of the tournament was December 26th to January 5th. It is 10 days.
Right.
There's no reason why you should not be able to make 10-day accommodations that ensure that nothing's going to happen.
Isolation.
Which means you rent the entire hotel.
You get a bubble.
And you bubble them.
Remember last year when COVID was far more deadly than it is right now? Still bad right now. Cases rising. We all know that.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is December 2020, January 2021, when they said go into a bubble. There's no fans here. Play your tournament,
and
they
it
made
worked
it through with no problem.
Perfectly. 0 cases last year. I think there were like 1 or 2 people who tested positive coming in, and they were isolated, and it wasn't a problem.
Exactly. To the point where there was actually a story out there that there was a wedding going on in the same hotel the night that they actually canceled.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
How? It is either ignorance or ignorance or negligence. It's one or the other.
Probably both, and
probably a healthy, hearty helping of both from Hockey Canada.
Well, here's the thing. It's not Hockey Canada. It's the
It's the IIHF. Okay. Well, I didn't know how much Hockey Canada had to do with the accommodations because they were the host country.
Well, and listen, here's the thing with that. It's par for the course when probably for the 24 to 48 hours leading up to it, that tournament was underway. There were a few games being played. Okay, great. They canceled out 5 or 6 other tournaments, which included things like the Women's Worlds and stuff like for the second year in a row with no plans to reschedule. Stuff like they so missed the mark on so many things like that I almost wasn't sympathetic to the fact, like, I'm sympathetic to the players who were 18 years old or whatever, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Hell, we had 16-year-olds playing in this tournament and doing really well. Connor Bedard, anybody? A 4-goal game as a 16-year-old.
Is that good?
And then he came back. Did you catch this? He came back to his junior team and had a 4-goal game in his return.
That's funny.
Like, ridiculous. That's the cool stuff to see. Why do people watch the World Juniors? It's for the players because they're They're teenagers. It's the joy that they have playing in that tournament and representing their country at that age. So I feel bad for them because
Absolutely.
because I feel bad for like, and here's the other part of it. I feel bad for like Team Canada, for example, who to that point, no problems. They weren't missing players.
Right.
But 5 other teams in the tournament were, and you only had 10 there. That's an issue.
Yep.
You know, you can't go around and have Team USA had to forfeit, and then I think Russia had to forfeit, and Czechia had to forfeit. It's Czechia now, by the way.
Yes.
Did you catch that?
I did.
Okay. So they had to forfeit. Like, you can't keep having these 1-0 forfeits. Like, somebody turned around and said, and correctly, I may add, if they do reschedule and say, let's try to do this in June or July, let's say, then you should wipe those 1-0 forfeits. You can keep the other results to that point for games that were, yes, actually physically played, but wipe the 1-0 forfeits and play those games too.
Yep.
You have to basically pick back up from where your schedule stopped and play those games. Please. Like, let's put it this way. There was talk that the U.S. had a good enough team to win gold again, but they were going to be robbed. But they were going to be robbed of that as soon as they had a case.
Yeah.
Because
it was going to be a really good tournament. The quality was expected to be spectacular.
But I almost didn't like as sympathetic as I am for the players. I almost wasn't sympathetic for the IIHF for
absolutely not.
For the way that they handled every other tournament, like basically because those tournaments don't make as much money. Like that the World Juniors and I guess the Men's World Championships are the two that make enough money to allow the others to function. So they basically it's show must go on whether it's right or wrong, and like kind of a karma moment, if you will, because they tried to power through your awful planning of a hotel and non-bubble situation led to this. So
I like how the IIHF handles things on the ice in terms of their officiating, in terms of how they handle head hits. Generally speaking, in terms of the on-ice product, I think the IIHF
great,
does a good job. Off the ice, it's a sports league. Think about it. Name a sports league that isn't just mangled beyond belief, right? Look at FIFA. Look at F1. Look at the NFL. Look at like everybody. So it is what it is.
Exactly. I mean, it was just, but it really was just another, like, reading that the tournament was getting canceled and the way you feel for the players. It was just another, it was basically at the time that it happened because you got through, I don't know how many days, what'd they do? 3 days. So it was like 28th, 29th that this came down. It was like one last COVID blow in 2021 before, 2022 comes out and, and you see where it goes. I mean,
speaking of one last blow from 2021, rest in peace, Betty White. Gotta mention it.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, of all days, you're 12 hours away from New Year's.
2.5 weeks shy of her 100th birthday.
I know.
Brutal.
But it's almost a stark reminder that by having that tournament off with 3 days to go in the year, like, we're not going to start 2022 off out of this situation. It might get there eventually. It's gonna eventually it'll level out again. You got to imagine because it just has in the past. I mean, this is how many we've done this,
because we've done this long enough that we have data points before.
Right,
we have reference points.
Well, and there's certainly enough. I'm not going to make this. I don't want to make this a whole thing about this.
Definitely not doing that.
Yep. We have games to talk about, but the bottom line is that you don't just flip the calendar over to January and act like the way that the last 2 weeks of December went didn't exist.
That's fair.
It's going to start this way. Let's put it this way. In the Flyers case, we said it already. The best news that you could get was that 3 of your players who were in protocol as soon as the break was up are coming out of protocol. They're out. Actually, they are out of protocol. They're just not with the team yet, and they will be by tomorrow.
Yep.
And there you go.
Well, you know what? It's
probably why they have an off day, by the way, is so while they make the travel, because they're not going that far. LA to Anaheim is not that far.
No, it's kind of annoying that the Anaheim game isn't until Tuesday, by the way. I would have liked to see it on like Monday so they could have the extra day to travel and not just sit in California for an extra day before they come home. But whatever, that's just me.
Well, you mean before having to play
at home 2 nights later?
At home against Pittsburgh?
Right
off the bat, come home from California.
Right.
Hopefully shake off, the the time zone travel and get ready to play one of the teams. Pittsburgh's not ranked in the top 10 by any means, but they're like right there.
I mean, and has Sid played yet this year?
I thought he did.
He hasn't played much.
Well, they haven't played much as a team.
That's fair. But, well, regardless, we're talking about how 2021 ended. Let's talk about how the Flyers ended 2021. And they ended that with 2 games back-to-back nights, starting with a win in Seattle. So, Kevin, what do you think of Seattle's new building?
That was pretty cool, all things considered. The scoreboard throws me a little bit.
The scoreboards?
Well, right, because it's 2. It's like split.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Unique. It's unique, but they had a good atmosphere. I'll give them that. Like I don't think anything was going to be Vegas. Let's be fair. I mean, Vegas is like the entertainment capital of the world.
They're also just not as good on the ice as Vegas, and that does matter in terms.
I'm not worried about the product they have on the ice because eventually it could get there. Obviously, everybody can eventually get there. But like in terms of like what really was it about Vegas though? It wasn't just that the team did well. It was they got to the playoffs and everything was a gigantic spectacle that looked like they spent 24 hours, the entire 24 hours prior, just sitting in a room trying to figure out how to execute this plan.
Everything that night did was gold.
Yeah,
comedy. He sliced a jet in half. Come on now.
The night on the ice, the drum line that was up in the fortress, like all that's like they played it up so well. It was done so well. And
I expect, and again, this leads back to the on ice product because I expect when Seattle makes the playoffs to have something going on, right? You have Jerry Bruckheimer running things. The man knows drama.
Well, you're going to get a little bit of time for that because it's not going to be this year.
Well, that's what I'm saying is you had that Vegas lightning in a bottle first season, make the playoffs, make the cup final. Like, that team was good off the bat. They didn't just squeak into the playoffs either. They were good.
It is really funny to me, though, that basically outside of the roster, everything they've got is good. The arena looks pretty nice. The atmosphere was good. They've got sick uniforms. And
Dave Haxtell finally shaved that goatee. Because that was horrifying.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. I'm still not I'm still not even looking at that right now though. Like he counts as the group that's out there kind of. But like they got all that going for them. They do have people buying in. Like they can definitely sell tickets. It's not like they're gonna have a problem doing that in the beginning. It's new, it's exciting, it's different. People want to see it. In the first year of your franchise, you kind of have that time period where you can kind of allow people to adjust to because
you get a honeymoon period for sure where the fans in the market are excited.
There's also enough people out there, and this isn't a knock, it's just a reality, who don't know the game well enough to know that this is not great to begin
Seattle
with.
Is learning hockey still.
Right, you're almost learning on the fly, so you get almost like it's almost like your first season is an extended preseason to an extent from a fan standpoint because you get to be educated on it before you even get into the main part of it.
And I do want to mention, by the way, that there is a very active hockey community in Seattle who does know hockey very well. We're certainly not implying here that Seattle as a whole doesn't know hockey. We do know that the Seattle Thunderbirds are out there.
Seattle, Everett. And a lot of Seattle people are Vancouver Canuck fans because it's not that far. So
yeah, I'm curious how deep the roots are in the Seattle area in terms of Vancouver fandom. I'm curious how many of those people jump ship.
Speaking of which, really quick, did you see that story about the Seattle Vancouver story about the fan who pointed out? I did. That's awesome stuff. Like that is the stuff that makes the hockey community so great.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that up because that is actually a great story. Kraken fan Nadia Popovici, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I apologize. Attended a game between Seattle and the Canucks.
It was literally their first home game, I think. Seattle's first home game.
Was that their first home game?
I believe, yeah.
Okay. And she was sitting behind the bench and noticed that one of the... It was an
assistant equipment manager.
No, it was... Yeah. One of the assistant equipment managers had a mole on his neck, and she is...
For Vancouver.
Right. And she is a nurse, right? I believe she works in the medical field in some capacity.
She's a student. She's like a med
Oh,
school student.
she's a med student. I'm sorry.
Like 22 or something like that. 22, 23, something like that.
And she noticed this mole on his neck and thought it looked suspect, dangerous,
Yes,
questionable, whatever you want to call it.
Perfect word.
And
somehow or other alerted this person.
what she did is she typed it out on her phone on a note, like, hey, go get the mole on your neck looked at, and then held it against the glass and started banging on the glass until he looked at it.
Right.
And then he read it, and he went and got it checked out, and it was cancerous and has been removed. And he sent out an amazing statement from the Canucks.
Yeah, just to try to find who it was.
Trying to find her, and I assume that they're going to do something about it. I assume that
it's already been done.
Oh, has it? Okay.
Okay. So yesterday, the new year kicked off with the same two teams playing in Seattle, I believe.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Yes. So the same two teams are meeting, and that's not all that unusual. They're in the same division, blah, blah, blah. Like, it makes sense.
Sure.
They track her down,
mm-hmm.
get her behind the scenes prior to the game.
Of course.
To meet with the assistant equipment manager. She's in the same seats as before.
Awesome.
So she's sitting near the bench anyway. And then the two teams, Vancouver and Seattle, combined to put up $10,000 for a scholarship for her.
Oh, that's awesome. That
like,
is absolutely fantastic.
But like that's the story that the new year needs.
Oh, you're not
wrong. It off on a good note. Forget everything else. Just look at that story.
And all of that leads us to Seattle playing the Flyers a couple of nights prior.
Roundabout way of getting there, but we're here.
Hey, you know what? We're there. And I know Seattle's not a great team. The Flyers looked okay in that game.
It was a little rough, to be honest. I mean, here's where I'm at with this. It was the first game out of an 11-day break for both. So if the first period wasn't great, I get it.
Fair enough. Not a whole lot of practice time in there either.
They were getting outplayed in parts of like the second period. It was rough.
Yep.
And even into the third, still getting outplayed a little bit. Eventually, I mean, there were 5.5 minutes left in that game, and it was all of 15 seconds, but for 15 seconds, I'm pretty sure everybody thought they were going to lose that game.
Oh, I did.
I looked at that game, and I'm not saying that they were going to win or lose for sure, but like as it progressed on, I'm like, this has overtime game winner written all over it, because of the fact that as soon as they get to 3-on-3, they'll find a way to pick this team apart somehow at one point or another in it, and win off of that. But it's only going to be because of 3-on-3. It is not going to be anything else other than, listen, it got to 3-on-3. There's more ice. Things happen. Odd man rush. Game winner.
One thing I noticed this weekend, I don't remember if he started the overtime in Seattle, but he did. I believe he started the overtime the next night in San Jose. Why is Patrick Brown on the ice in the 3-on-3?
Okay, I got to take this back further, because he was on the ice for part of the overtime against Ottawa too, I believe.
Okay.
Before the pause.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Your initial thought, either it was Ottawa or it was the Montreal one.
Is it a power play specialist?
Or not
a face-off specialist?
Well, that's what I thought until he stayed on the ice longer than that for the next one too. Like he took the face-off. Okay, fine. They had actually won the face-off, and he was still on the ice after the fact. Like, if you win the face-off, get control, and he gets right off the ice, I totally get it.
7%.
Right.
If Travis Konechny jumps on the ice for him, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's like, okay, cool.
It doesn't even have to be Konechny for that.
I'm just throwing a name out there. You know what I mean.
Point. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, they are really shorthanded. I will say, like, I get that.
And I like a lot of the things Mike Yo's doing. He called a fantastic timeout last night.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to the Kings game.
I definitely want to talk about that decision too, but
because it was the best thing that happened in the game for them.
I want to talk about that for sure. I love that topic. But yeah, back to Wednesday night. I just don't understand. Like, even if you need a center out there, Claude Giroux and Kevin Hayes are routinely towards the top of the league in terms of face-off percentage. At least Giroux is.
And there was a difference between the end of the Montreal game, where he stays out there when that's before and we're going to get to that later too, before Sean Couturier's news comes out and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, you're playing without people. Like, it made sense. I get it. Like, when you're playing without people like Couturier in the lineup, and you don't necessarily, like, Konechny doesn't take face-offs during the game usually.
Not very often.
And Bill Farabee could probably shift over to center in a moment's notice, but he's not a face-off guy. And
definitely not.
And I'm sure that there's even an element of it. Like, the perfect guy who I would think comes into play here is Morgan Frost. Hey, I don't know if Morgan Frost can win this key defensive zone face-off to get his possession. So I'm putting the higher percentage guy out there, and then Frost is going to jump on the ice immediately after.
Right, like, because I want Morgan Frost on the ice in 3-on-3 because
he can do something. Exactly. And I don't even know if I've seen him out there that much in 3-on-3.
Nope.
Like, it's pretty infrequent. Like, there's parts of it that don't make sense. Speaking of this game, before we get to, because it was in the Seattle game, before we get to the person who scored the winner in overtime and all that good stuff, we should also bring this up as well, because this happened right off the bat, like 4 minutes into the game. Welcome back, Flyers. Claude Giroux wasted no time moving into second all time.
Yeah, so the biggest probably production star of the game was JVR with the 2 goals, but the biggest story of the game coming out of it is probably this one here, Claude Giroux.
It was the first goal of the game. So Giroux setting up the first goal of the game, you really don't know that JVR is going to be like the offensive star yet.
You don't know he's going to pick up that second goal too.
Right. I mean, for a while we didn't even know if there was going to be a second goal.
No, we didn't. But yeah, so Claude Giroux is now the not all-time. He is second all-time. He has passed Bill Barber, and he is...
But he's now by himself in second place in games played, assists, and points. And the assist to pass Bill Barber for second all-time in points just happened to coincide with another milestone. It was his 600th career assist.
Is Claude Giroux a top 5 Flyer of all time?
For sure.
Okay.
And I know he hasn't, and before people come out and go, he hasn't won anything, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to sit here and listen to this all the time.
Then you have to name 5 bullies, and that's it. You can't mention Lindros. You can't mention anybody else. You can't mention Pronger. Not here.
Well, and it's not even just that for me. It's, you could sit there and name players who you think belong in it. Because let's put it this way: Brian Propp never won a Stanley Cup, but people think he's a great Flyer because of the fact that they like, and did they make a few? Did
Mark Howe win a cup?
No, but here's the thing. But here's the thing. Did they have better players around them, better teams around them? Did they go further multiple times? Absolutely, they did.
Sure.
But that's the way it is. It's not Claude Giroux's fault that there's not a supporting cast for half of his career.
It's not Claude Giroux's fault that he was playing with Michael Raffl on his line for a whole season.
Right.
No disrespect to Michael Raffl, but he'll tell you he's not a first-line player.
But that's what bothers me, is because there are people who literally cherry pick on if he hasn't showed up for a game, like he's supposed to put up 3 points a game as if he was Gretzky. Like, stop.
I know.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and deny, and this is kind of lumping the whole 3 games together here, because I was a little harsh in the group chat last night, I suppose, because I was really telling it like it is, because my thoughts haven't. I mean, look, I did it already on this show before, so I'm not going out on a limb here.
Right.
I'm not trying to say, I'm not going to look at the flip to the calendar year. I'm not going to look at 7 games in a row with points and act like this team's going anywhere. I just don't see it. Like,
okay.
Well, and it's because I'm looking at who they're playing now and who they're going to play.
Right.
And I sit there and I just look at, let's just like, Anaheim's a surprisingly good team so far this year, and the only thing that might come into play is I don't know if they're going to have everybody, because they did have some big names going into protocol recently. Like, to be honest, it would be a absolute shame if a Trevor Zegras is not able to play in this game, because he's that good.
I want to watch
him play.
Yep.
I'm glad it's not a home game, because I'd be disappointed if I missed out on watching a guy play in person for the first time who could be a superstar. And I don't think that's a stretch to say already.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Zegras has the potential. I mean, Zegras is already making headlines for what he's able to do skill-wise.
He has that electric potential for sure.
He does, but and the cool part is that he's not necessarily, like, I'm not saying he wasn't a top pick, but he wasn't a number 1 or 2.
No, he was
like, he wasn't a Matthews or a McDavid, but he's not going to be in terms of point production, but he's got a flair for the not just a dramatic, but he's got creativity. He's entertaining, and he's going to
be a lot of fun to watch.
And here's the thing: he's certainly a hot topic because of the fact that some people don't think it's so entertaining.
John Gibson has to be going, oh, thank God we have some future here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
Because he's not getting any younger. I think he's 27 or 28 at this point, and
for what it's worth, I don't think John Gibson's your starting goalie on Tuesday.
I hope not. That'd be nice.
No, I'll tell you why. Come on, you got to know it's coming. Who's the
What's that?
backup in Anaheim?
Oh, is it? Oh God. Okay, so which former Fly? Oh, it's Stoley, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
give me
it's
Stoley.
gotta be his game. You can't imagine that they won't, right?
When the
Get,
Ducks come to Philly, does Stoley get a package? He won't, but he should.
I don't know about that because he didn't. No, because it's not this. Here's the problem. He was in Philly. He was more of a Phantom than he was a Flyer.
He won't, but he should. I love me some Stoley.
He was always. I always liked him because he like to deal with it. Like he was a nice guy, and
He seemed like a really nice guy.
And you know what? Here's the byproduct of that. Goalies take a long time, as we'll get into with the San Jose game a little bit too.
Yep.
So goalies usually take a little bit of time. It feels like Anthony Stolarz has found like his place where he can somewhat make it a little bit. He's having a huge run of success right now. Like,
yeah,
like not groundbreaking. Like I'm not trying to make it. This isn't Jordan Binnington like taking over the world by storm here, but he's established himself. He belongs on an NHL roster.
He is set up for success as an NHL backup for sure.
And that's for right now. I mean, he could very well earn a starting job if he gets an opportunity to play with some regularity. He's doing okay.
Yeah, and the Ducks are in a great spot because John Gibson is the kind of guy that's elite enough that if things are going well, you want him to play 60, 65 games because he's just that good. But Anthony Stolarz is playing well enough that he could steal 25 or 30 starts off him, and that just takes the workload off John Gibson, and that'll make him better.
I mean, I'm pulling this up because this is really good to look at the progression.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. Hold on one second. He's 27 now, so go back. He was, I believe that would make him 22, making his debut. Man. He goes back 6 seasons now.
I believe that.
Okay, so 7 games played.
Are you trying to tell me that the Flyers might have rushed a goalie prospect a little bit? No way. That's never happened ever in the history of the team before.
Because the year that I'm looking at, it wasn't the year of 100 goalies.
I think they were just rushing him because Steve Mason sucked.
No, I think they had injuries this year because it was too limited of a number.
Okay.
Like I think if rushing a goalie to me would be, hey, the guy started 20 games that year.
Well, okay, that's fair.
Stolarz started 4 games and had 7 games total because he probably popped in in relief for 3 of them because they weren't a good team then either.
Yeah, I believe if I recall correctly, he came up down the stretch because someone got hurt and ended up having to play time just because there was nobody else.
Bingo. And then to make matters even better, the next year he got a taste of this, and the next year didn't even come up. Period.
Yep.
So
was that the year that he was hurt? That might be the year he missed the whole year with his knee.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. And then the next year, he was trying to break through. By that point,
you start having the other guys clogging up the system.
18-19 was interesting because that was the year that in the middle of it, they got Cam Talbot.
Yeah, that was the year of 800 goalies. That was the year Peter Mrazek was there. Cam Talbot
Mrazek was earlier than that, but yeah.
I thought that was that same season. Mike McKenna came in.
The year that McKenna came in was also the year that Hart debuted, and they still had.
Wasn't that all 18-19?
Yeah, but 18-19 wasn't Mrazek, I didn't think.
I thought it was. Okay.
No, because 18-19 wasn't a playoff year. Mrazek was there for a playoff year.
Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe it was
because they went for it, and I don't recall they didn't drop out of the playoff race, but they squeezed in late and. By the end of it, Elliott was the better option in goal for a little while, or they went between the two or something. I forget, but it doesn't matter.
Things were bad. I'm looking up Peter Mrazek here real quick.
Because I think Mrazek should have been 17-18.
It was 17-18. It was the year prior. God, 17 games. He had an 891 save percentage.
Yeah, because remember the part where they traded for Cam Talbot and somehow or other Stolarz played more games for the team that he was traded to than Talbot did?
Somehow you lost that trade when Cam Talbot was 18 months off a Vezina nomination.
So let's go into this for a minute. So in his so-called rookie season, or when he first gets the call up, He made 4 starts, played 7 games in 16-17, 2-1-1, 207 goals against, 928 save percentage, good first impressions, all that type of stuff, right? Year 2, 12 games, 10 starts, 4-3-3. Again, not horrible because 3 OT losses or shootout losses or whatever means you're keeping him in it. 333 goals against, but a 902 save percentage. So your
team's bad in front of you.
And you're hovering around average with the save percentage. And then he got traded to Edmonton, only started 2 games, played in 6, lost both of the starts, 377 goals against, 897 save percentage.
And that Oilers team was bad. They were falling apart.
So signs with Anaheim. He literally only played in 1 game in the next season at the NHL level. He was a minor league goalie the rest of the way.
And I think he put up good numbers with the Gulls, right?
I'd have to go look. I'm only looking at his NHL ones, but so that one start
on elite prospects.
No, that one start was a loss. He gave up 2 goals on 36 shots. Not bad.
No,
that's a
Can't
good start.
complain. Yeah.
But listen to these then. And he hasn't played a ton. I'm not trying to make it sound like he's played a ton, but 8 games last season, 7 starts, 4-3 record, 220 goals against, 926 save percentage. Not bad for a backup.
Stoley the goalie, man.
And then this year, 10 games, 9 starts. His record is 6-2-1.
Yeah, I don't want him to start on Tuesday.
213 goals against and 932 save percentage. He's starting his game on Tuesday.
You know he's throwing up a goose egg.
I won't go that far.
I will. You know how that works. Come on now. I think he thinks this team gave up on him.
The guy does have 2 shutouts this year.
I know. And I think he's got a vendetta because this team gave up on him.
He battled a lot of injuries, and I don't know that he won't in the future either. But I mean, here's the thing.
But right now he's playing good hockey.
For limited action, 33 starts, 44 games, a 16-12-5 record when you're first coming up into the league is not bad.
Stoley for Vezina.
And a 263 goals against when collectively over your career you're kind of going from rough stuff to building it isn't bad either. His save percentage for his career is 918. That's
By the way, this is why we always end up going an hour and 40 minutes because we're talking about Anthony Stolarz' stats.
They're gonna play him this week. It makes sense.
No, I know, but we still got 2 more games to talk about.
Okay, well, because here's what I'm reflecting on, and this goes back to all the games collectively. Now you're gonna play a team like we said. They're kind of a surprise team. Anaheim is. So you're gonna play them. They're 10th ranked in the league. You almost don't think that's like where they are. Like there's times where you felt like they're better. There's times where you want to sit there and say, they can't be in 10th. They're probably like 15th or whatever. Like they're middle of the pack. No, they're actually a really good team. And we got on this because of the fact that like with Zegras, and it would be a shame if guys like that didn't play. I guess. I mean, I don't know. Is it a shame that guys who maximize their full potential may not play? From a Flyer standpoint, I mean, if you want to keep clinging to the playoffs are still a possibility. Like, they never got into a playoff spot over this last little stretch. They were entered yesterday a point back of the last spot, which if they would have extended the point streak even, they could have lost in overtime again or lost in a shootout, and they would have still technically held the playoff spot because of fewer games played than Detroit. Right. That being said, there are at least 2 teams behind them that can pass them without even trying. Like they have enough games in hand that it's not impossible.
Right. The Boston Bruins have barely played.
The Islanders have 4 fewer games played than the Flyers do, and are 6 points back. So do the math. Not to mention
are still playing just a hefty amount of home games from here on out to make up for their start of schedule.
And not to mention the fact that they were supposed to play in Philly a month ago and didn't because of a COVID outbreak then.
You missed the opportunity.
Well, so not only that, but it's like you still have multiple matchups with them.
And they're better than they were 2 months ago because they started the season very poorly.
And they're just continuing to get healthy.
Yep. Continuing to get better. Barry Trotz is still working his magic.
Or can, at least. I still would trust him too.
And Barry Trotz, his teams are always like a slow train. They start building and they start rolling. They gather some momentum. And then by the time they hit the playoffs, they're just a steam engine.
They do have a lot to make up in terms of anybody else. Like them on the playoffs, it's not going to feel like much. I'm going to tell you right now, if the Flyers have games in hand on Detroit, then the Islanders have a lot of games in hand on Detroit. Like honestly, if the Islanders can just keep pace with Boston, that's your battle right now.
Probably, yeah.
But like the question becomes, can they get on some crazy roll to jump into more of the standings than where where Pittsburgh and the Rangers and the Capitals and the Hurricanes are? Like, the Hurricanes are the best in the league. That's going to be tough, but like, can you get to where the Rangers are? Can you get to where the Penguins are? Like, if you're that team, like if you're specifically that team. If you're not, then like you're probably the last wild card. And hey, listen, maybe they're that team that gets in and does make the run because they have the talent. They didn't have a lot of players for a long period of time early in the year, so it puts you behind the 8 ball. And we know they're better. Like, we know that the Islanders are better than that.
Oh yeah,
as compared to others. Like, like it's just the way it goes. Let's get to the let's move on from Seattle. Oh, by the way, let's finish up the Seattle game with the real quick with the Provorov game winner, which was just sick.
Pretty. Claude,
exactly.
Ivan Provorov loves scoring in overtime.
He does. He as quickly as we can talk about that game, he had an awful game in LA to kind of sandwich the whole thing. So he's had moments, but he hasn't had a great year. Some of that, I'm sure, has to do with the fact that best laid plans didn't work out this year, basically, because how close are we? We're almost halfway through the year at this point.
Getting there. Yeah, 30-something games.
It was 30. You're 32 games in, so it was almost halfway through the season at this point. It's not too far off, and he's played 4 games with his intended partner. Like,
right.
It just is what it is.
And that's one of the things we've talked about a lot in the group chat and kind of off mic here is, should the Flyers tear it down? And you seem to think the answer is yes. I'm a little more on the fence about it, but I generally agree that it wouldn't be the worst thing.
The thing that I come back to is you don't have a reason not to, kind of, in a way.
Well, but here's the thing. Comcast isn't going to, because they're going to look at last season and say, well, it sucked because COVID restrictions. And they're going to look at this season and go, well, it sucked because Ryan Ellis wasn't healthy. And it's an excuse for Comcast to not allow Chuck Fletcher or whoever is the general manager at the time, because if it's bad, I don't know if Chuck Fletcher survives the season. I don't know if they're going to allow them to tear it down and maximize assets and return and build it correctly. And
okay, now you're on the right track, because I do think there's still going to be high turnover this year.
I don't disagree with that. I think when you go out and get Rasmus Ristolainen, when you go out and get Keith Yandel, guys on 1-year deals, right, you set yourself up for that.
You have too many 1-year contracts, and you have too many guys who, like the next 2 months are going to be really interesting for. Look, Keith Yandel's had a rough go. I don't know if Keith Yandel has any value left in a trade.
Keith Yandel should not get the opportunity to break the record. He should be benched tomorrow.
No, but we know how this goes, though. Yep. Like, when you're a good locker room guy and you're a leader and you've been good, when you've been good to the game for how long he's been good to the game is good to you in return, and people give those guys the opportunity for stuff like that. To be honest, it's neither here nor there for me, because you know what? I don't know that, like, hey, let's say you throw in Cam York for him. I don't know if it makes you any better or worse anyway. And you might as well take the results for what it's worth, because the results are what they are.
I will take the Phantom's 4th best defenseman over Keith Yandel at this point.
I hear you, but I'm like, what I'm getting, we already kind of do have the Phantom's 4th best defenseman anyway.
Fair enough.
He's the one who's playing opposite of him, so whatever. Anyway, to me, look, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know that there's any way to avoid what's coming to an extent. Like, you're that close to a playoff spot, and at the same time, you're that close to being right back where you were 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Like, you go on one more extensive losing streak, and you're going to be right back down there, and I don't think there's coming back out of it this time.
I'm sure everybody's going to be very surprised to hear this. The Flyers are hovering somewhere in the middle.
But I don't think they will.
You don't think so? You think they go dynamic one way or the other?
No, I don't think they're good enough to play
stay in the middle. Not even
the teams they're going to play and come out of it with enough points to be there. Like, I think the teams behind them.
I don't disagree with you, but I've also seen how Carter Hart's playing this season, and I think Carter Hart's going to keep you in a lot of hockey games.
keep you in it is one thing. Winning games is another. Like they
But
can't keep losing.
as we've seen, man, if this team can stay in a game, they can get a goal late, push things to overtime, start accumulating some points. Again, I'm not saying they should. I kind of agree with you on the rebuild thing, but I'm looking at it and thinking about how Comcast is looking at the Flyers as an asset and keeping them in the playoff conversation. It's going to be hard for Comcast to allow them to say, okay, trade Keith Yandel, trade Rasmus Ristolainen, trade everything that's not nailed down. This year's chalked. I don't see that happening as long as they're anywhere near anything.
And okay, I'm not disagreeing with that. That's the way that they operate.
Right.
I think that they're going to play like. I look ahead and I see, okay, Anaheim, Pittsburgh, San Jose this upcoming week. We already lost to San Jose this week and didn't look good in the process. Anaheim and Pittsburgh are better than you, flat out.
Fair enough.
That could be a completely lost week. Maybe you get a point again out of playing San Jose.
Right.
But I think they lose to Anaheim. I think they lose to Pittsburgh. That's just me. And by the way, if that already happens, it's a 4-game losing streak already.
Right. That's fair.
And then you're going to you play San Jose, you go, all right, maybe they get a point, maybe two, maybe they do, maybe that's a game Carter Hart plays and you steal the win. Or actually, better yet, if Carter Hart's going to play Anaheim and Pittsburgh, then you're going to give Martin Jones San Jose like you wanted to.
That's
maybe he does steal that game.
Right.
He probably comes in with some motivation. He had some good games leading up to LA.
Right. Yeah, Martin Jones has generally been pretty decent this season. But that was his first start in a couple of weeks.
But then let's follow it up. Carolina, Boston, Rangers. That's 3 straight losses to me. You're going to get demolished by those teams unless you are playing way better than we've seen this week. You're going to get demolished by those teams, and then to come back and have to play the Islanders first, which if the Islanders are at least modestly rested, it's a road game. Good luck.
Right.
Detroit's not a pushover this year. I mean, they're not great, but they're not a pushover. They're not the bottom feeders. Columbus is going to probably have passed you by then. Buffalo might be hot on your heels if you're not winning games.
Fair.
Dallas already demolished you this year. The Islanders again, also on the road again. And then you got to play LA and Winnipeg, which LA just took care of business against you, and Winnipeg's better than you. And that's and then that's the break, which your current break features rescheduled games against the Islanders, Capitals, and Penguins.
Yeah, things don't look fantastic.
Things
look a little grim.
Right. Well, and I'm not trying to say they're going to lose every single game. Some nights you're going to get the other team's worst too.
Right. Some nights Carter Hart's going to come out and make 42
But I look
saves.
at like here's a perfect example. I look at the games. Look at this. Listen to this stretch coming out of what was supposed to be the Olympic break. Okay. I'm skipping the first game back because it's a road game in Detroit. They're probably both on the same wavelength at this point, right? Like Detroit's middle of the pack too. But then Washington, St. Louis, Edmonton, Minnesota, Chicago, Vegas, Florida, Carolina. There's one game in there is that
hard?
To me, it's impossible.
Yeah.
First of all, you're going to play Edmonton on a back end of a back-to-back. McDavid might have 6 points that night.
See, but here's the thing. Okay. I don't know. Like it still comes back to the fact that we haven't seen the full lineup. We've seen the full lineup, I think, once, maybe twice this season.
All right. Can I let me click this really quick thing while we get
to it,
'cause that's the reason why.
So this is something we do have to mention, and we will get to this game in San Jose eventually.
Very quickly.
Right. But when you haven't seen Ryan Ellis all season, and I understand that that's, something we've kind of talked about ad nauseum here, but Kevin Hayes has missed a bunch of time. Sean Couturier is now out week to week. Like the team hasn't been healthy, so I don't necessarily know if it's fair to judge Chuck Fletcher. But then again, you just point out that Ryan Ellis is ancient and has a little bit of an injury history, and that's kind of Ryan Ellis.
Well, he's ancient though, like he's 30.
I know, but I just mean given the contract situation and the fact that he is a little bit hurt and he's got a lot of hard miles on him.
He does. No, he does.
He's got a lot of hard miles on him. But it's just a really tough spot because I could easily see Sean Couturier comes back, Ryan Ellis gets healthy. I could see the team being decent to even okay at that point. It just, at that point, is it too late to climb back in it? And if it is, can we reconcile with that fact and make the trades we need to make?
So here's my take on this. They may very well get all those players back, and that's fine.
Right.
It's probably too late at that point because it'll be
February.
Let's right. For Ellis, it'll be February. For Couturier, it might be February. We just really don't know what week.
We don't know anything about Couturier.
Week to week, 2 weeks ago, for Kevin Hayes was 10 days.
Right.
And he was back. And he's not
week to week for Ryan Ellis has been since October.
Well,
he's been week to week since October. So,
here's my thing. You can already see that Kevin Hayes right now is a shell of himself. He's not completely healthy. He's trying to battle through. It wasn't until a week ago, roughly, that Chuck Fletcher did actually say Sean Couturier has been dealing with some things all year. Right. Cool. And at least it was an admission. It was a revelation that what we think, if he's not playing well, everybody goes, he's got to be hurt. He's got to be hurt. He can't be he can't.
He's too good to not. Right.
Which is exactly what it is, though. And I think that when he comes back from whatever he's dealing with, he will also probably be kind of a shell of himself down the stretch.
Maybe.
And probably the same thing with Ellis. You want everybody to be healthy, and they're going to have names in the lineup, and that's all well and good. And then, oh, by the way, in the meantime, if you don't run the others into the ground for leaning on him so heavy, listen, all due respect, because we already talked about him extensively in the show. All due respect to Claude Giroux, but he's not a spring chicken anymore either. You can't lean on this guy every single night and expect him to be your best player constantly, and they just do. I mean, he's not
going to put up 102 points, including a hat trick against the Rangers on the last day of the season to get you in the playoff. He's just not going to do that every year. He can't. Nobody can.
He's not, but at the same time,
Connor McDavid can.
But you tell me how many players at 33 who aren't that level player are still putting up 29 points in 33 games.
Very few. No, Claude Giroux has had an incredible season.
He's still that quality player. Imagine what happens when when he does go to another team and isn't the number one guy.
He's going to be a fantastic line mate for Taylor Hall. I'm telling you.
I don't know how much. Look, I don't want to sit here and act like I don't know how. I know how many years.
Coyle Hall Giroux is coming.
I don't know if that. I don't think it's Boston, but
man,
I don't think Boston can afford him, to be honest.
How about Nylander Tavares Giroux?
Holy crap!
And that's the second line.
I mean, look, here's the like I've said, the good part with Giroux is that you're gonna get to honor him in such a way before you ever make this decision, because you do have a lot of games ahead before the deadline hits. The deadline's not until March this year. It's late.
It's late.
Well, and it's because of the fact that you have a full month of April this time. It's not a week of April. So you have, all that type of stuff. Anyway, he needs 25 more games, and he's at 1,000.
And he's going to do that for sure.
Right, and he's going to do that, and he's going to do it in a Flyers uniform more than likely.
Hopefully.
There's enough. No, there's enough. They won't make that move until desperation time kicks in.
I know, but he's also, he hasn't missed a ton of games recently, but he's not the youngest, and knock on wood, and
Well, sure, barring injury or illness, he will play his 1,000th game with the Flyers.
Right, and that's what I'm worried about.
He's also, because let's just say he had 2 assists in the game last night against LA.
Yep.
He needs 13 points to get to 900. He's going to get to 900 with the Flyers.
Going to do that too.
As long as he plays the 25 games of the Flyers, he'll get the 13 points.
Right.
So you're going to have a guy who played to that point his entire career with the same team, 1,000 games, 900 points. I don't know. Last time I checked, 0.9 points per game is pretty darn good.
It's real good.
I understand it's not point per game completely, but it's pretty darn good.
All right. So he didn't score on Thursday night against the San Jose Sharks, but I think it is finally time to start talking about that game.
No, it is, because I think the guy we need to talk about is actually the goaltender.
Felix Sandstrom made his NHL debut.
I don't want to jump the gun on Felix Sandstrom here.
He looked fantastic.
He did look really good. I don't want to jump the gun on this, but this is something to consider. I'm not going to sit here this did go through my mind a little bit. Martin Jones is one of those 1-year contract guys.
I think the idea is for Felix Sandstrom to.
No, but if you get down the stretch and he gets enough games potentially that you see what you have on a consistent level, like he played well in a game where he got peppered with shots from, it's not the best team in the world, but it's also not, completely a pushover. Like,
No, the San Jose Sharks have been decent this year. They've been solid.
They're in the middle. They're in the middle pack too, basically.
Yeah. Which, I mean, compared to last season for them is a major step up. And Erik Karlsson looks really good this year. Same with Brent Burns.
I was going to say, I thought Burns looked way better this time around. I mean,
this time around specifically, yes, but just in general.
I mean, here's in fairness, the Sharks are actually like more legitimate of a possibility for a playoff spot than others.
Probably better playoff chances than the Flyers.
They're 2 points out of a playoff spot. LA's right there. Edmonton's right there. San Jose's in the Pacific, so Calgary's Calgary's got a ton of games to make up. So does Colorado. So it's take the 3 teams I just mentioned: San Jose, LA, Edmonton. Throw Winnipeg in there again too, or throw Winnipeg's in there. Throw Vancouver in there again. After all that craziness, throw Vancouver in there again because yes, when you
Bruce,
go,
there it is.
Well, when you go 8-0-1 in the first 9 games with your new coach,
now that's how you replace your head coach.
Yeah, but they have talent. We knew
I
that.
know.
Like Pettersson's a really great player. Hughes is good. Like,
remember when we thought Travis Konechny was like our version of Brock Besser?
Okay, now I'm jumping to the LA game for a minute because that really bothered me. Like, by the way, I noted this in my takeaways because I don't know if it was out there much. He took that 10-minute misconduct and got 1 shift for 19 seconds for the rest of the game. He was strapped to the bench after that, which, you know what? You got to know better. Like, he had to know better there.
Yeah, whatever you did, you clearly pushed it too far. Like, you know where the line is, and you gotta not do that.
Well, what did we just? What is one of the things we just said about where we are in the season? We're getting closer to the halfway point, which is, for lack of a better term, it's an easy point to make general projections because you can easily do
X times 2.
Right, you just double the numbers and go, what's he on pace for? Well, I see a guy with 5 goals on the season right now at 32 games in.
Man, that's not good enough.
Exactly.
You're making big boy money now. That's not good enough.
And I know that there's people out there that want to look at Joel Farabee a little bit in the same way.
I love me some Joel Farabee.
And go, listen, you just got a big ticket now too, which means it didn't kick in yet, but your ticket's coming. And
you got to make the room somewhere.
Well, not make room, but it's you got your big ticket now. You got to deliver like one of the big guys too. But he's had to go on a stretch like he's on right now, where you score 6 goals in 8 games. That is delivering. Yeah, he had a rough month and a half with, no goals or 1 goal in 14 games, and it was his only point. I get it, but they could score period during that stretch. Like, it wasn't just him. The whole team was awful.
Right.
Like, they've come back to an extent where, you know what, scoring's been hard to come by. You're getting a lot of these 3s and 2s again, kind of in recent games. Farabee's scoring regularly.
Starting to see performance out of Joel Farabee, kind of like we saw last year, where he was in a lot of games. He was the only forward who cared.
He's one of the only guys who's moving every single shift.
He is 100% the whole game. It doesn't matter how bad the team is around him.
The thing that I noticed most about all of these games collectively, you can there's ways to, you don't have to be the fastest team to win.
Right.
You can accommodate leg speed with puck speed. If you move the puck quickly, you're making up for the fact that you're not moving as quickly by yourself as an individual. You can move up the ice quickly and still attack with some speed. They don't have either.
No.
They move painfully slow, skating-wise.
Except Cam Atkinson. He's quick.
Yeah, but see, my problem with singling guys out is they don't play the whole game. You need to have, I'm sorry. I can't listen to another break in the action where the video package, the highlight package that comes on the TV is how Zach McEwen and Patrick Brown had a good energy shift. Yeah, I can't listen to that.
They can't be your best players.
I'm tired of hearing that stuff. And I'm not trying to, I know that by leaving out, people take this as an opportunity because you don't mention Claude Giroux to jump in on him. It's he's also one player too, just like Cam Atkinson is, or Joel Farabee is. Actually, last night they were all on the same line together at one point in time. So great, they're all on the same line together, but that means that for the next, the fourth line can't score. They might have high energy, but they can't score. So you can take the minute that you put McEwen, Brown, and Cates out there, or
that minute will be in the offensive zone. That's fine, but they're not going to get any scoring chances.
Right. You know what you're actually seeing from the fourth line that's actually okay? They're not a defense. I'm not saying not the defensive liability, but you're not getting the Nate Thompson stuck in your own zone.
In their own zone for 2 minutes and 15 seconds, like we've seen.
Right. So you're not getting that, but you are getting nothing productive. Like, you're not getting any offense. If they had one guy on that line, and I'm not talking about Oscar Lindblom, who could actually do something with the puck, like, you might actually get something. Like, there was a play in the game against LA. You're down by 2 goals. You're making a little bit of a push because you're feeling it a little bit, and it's a big-time scramble around the net. And if anybody on the ice can put that puck in, it's a 1-goal game with like 12 minutes. It's a whole
new ball game.
You've got something going.
Yep. But back to San Jose here. We will get to LA in just a second because I do want to talk about some of the strategy decisions that led to that mini comeback there. But back to San Jose for a second.
And Sandstrom, I guess, because we're really on him right now.
Yeah, but can we talk about the fact that the Flyers lost this game because Keith Yandel sucks?
Your words.
That's fine. You don't have to say it. You're around the team. If you don't want to say that, that's fine. I certainly understand.
I have my way of saying it. My wording was it's hard to justify keeping him in the
I'll
line.
just come out and say it. He sucks. Not only do you cough the puck up at the blue line on the power play, you then get absolutely walked by Logan Couture. He gets absolutely walked by Logan Couture, who's not exactly the most high skill player. Like, Logan Couture is very good. Don't get me wrong. He's an above average player in the league, borderline elite. He's not Connor McDavid. He's not one of these guys who you go, yeah, okay, fine. That guy does that sometimes. No, you got embarrassed. If that was a forward, I'd be like, wow, that was a poor effort but you're a forward, so I guess I get it. That's a defenseman. Yeah. That's a defenseman with the Iron Man streak.
Okay. So here was my one problem with it, like, because you're not wrong completely about some things. No, but people were blaming, like, people were sitting there going, oh, that was kind of a rough goal for Sandstrom or whatever, and I'm like, it's not but hold on, I get where they're trying to come from because he beats him 5-hole. I'm like, it's Logan Couture though. He was an all-star.
Yeah, no, he's certainly very good. And if I said anything,
if you give the guy a breakaway, I'm pretty sure he knows how to finish. Like, I'm not worried about the goal. That's like, I feel like Sandstrom's first save in the game was a partial breakaway. Like, you can't exactly expect a guy to face multiple odd man situations, including in overtime with a guy like Hurdle on the ice, and not get beat a couple times. It's just going to happen. That whole sequence was embarrassing.
Embarrassing. That is such a good word for it.
First of all, what's embarrassing about it is you are in a spot where you're leading the game 1-0. You haven't played your best, and now you're on a power play where you could go up 2-0 and kind of really put a stamp on this game. You could take control, and you don't. You give up the goal then. Then for the rest of the power play that you still have, you still can't get out of your own way, to the point where they almost scored another shorthanded goal and then did score basically as their own guy was coming out of the box. Brent Burns walking down Broad Street.
I know. I just absolutely all by himself. Turns out he used to be a forward. He knows how to do that.
Here's the thing. It's funny because we just talked about Joel Farabee briefly. Like, the goal he scores is absolutely clutch. Like, the goal he scores right there, I sit there and go, there's the guy who deserved the goal. Look at him. Look at him skate out there every shift. He's excellent. He's moving his feet. He's trying really hard. And when he scores a goal like that, I sit there and go, it's why for the entire duration of this, we've been on this for a month now with where is it going? Is there going to be a big change made? Was there going to be a coaching change? It did happen. All that stuff, right?
Right.
Joel Farabee's the one guy who I keep coming back to, and I go, you build around this kid.
You have to.
He is 21 years old. He's got 30 goals in his last 80 games. You build around this kid.
In my head right now, thinking about this Flyers team, the only true untouchables, Joel Farabee and Carter Hart.
And maybe Couturier from a leadership standpoint. I know you're shaking your head, but...
Okay, so this is not a negative on Sean Couturier in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I love Sean Couturier. Joel Farabee's been a leader on this team. We talked about it a couple of minutes ago. He was the only forward that carried last year. On the ice, where it matters, he's a leader for this team already.
Oh, he is.
He'll wear a letter at some point.
I don't doubt those things.
And if you're going true rebuild, if you're okay with being bad for a couple of years, I don't want to move Sean Couturier. I like him a lot. He's probably not my favorite Flyer, but he's up there for sure. I would move him for the right. I would move him for if a team misses the playoffs and jumps from 11-2 in the draft, I would trade him for like the second overall pick. You know what I mean? Like you're trading him for real value, but like if a team like Chicago wants to go for it next year, or Montreal if they want to get a center, if Montreal gets the second overall pick and offers it to you for Sean Couturier, are you saying no for it?
I don't know.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'd be willing to move Sean Couturier.
We're also talking about the only other guy who signed a big ticket for long term here.
I understand.
I mean, if you go down the list of every player who's locked up. I mean, the only other guys who are locked up this long at this point who probably can't be moved. I mean, Ellis is a tough sell because you just brought him in and he's got all that time left.
Yeah.
But I don't hate that because Ellis is the type of guy that as long as he's healthy, he can nurture younger defensemen.
He can be a mentor, right?
There's enough guys that are like defensively. The only two guys, not two guys, but like it's Provorov, Ellis, Sanheim. Sanheim's only got a year left beyond this year anyway, which I tread lightly. Like here's the thing.
Travis Sanheim is movable.
Oh, he's movable. I think that he's better than people give him credit for.
I agree.
I just don't want to. I don't want to veer into the territory of overpaying him is the problem. Like it's why I have a love-hate relationship with like what I would do with his future, because
okay,
I can justify keeping him. He's got a good skill set, but I also don't know if I want to pay him. Let's just call it Ivan Provorov money.
Well, here's the thing: if you're a good team, Travis Sanheim is ideally probably your fourth defenseman.
3-4. He's on the second pairing. Like
is that guy worth keeping through a rebuild, through a teardown? That's what I'm saying. Like
but that's if they do that.
Well, all right. We don't have time to do the rebuild discussion today. Maybe on next week's show. Let's talk about this LA game real quick before we get out of here.
You really want to get into the move that Mike Yeo made.
I do, because
it's gutsy as hell.
I'm a big fan of this, and we've heard some crazy stories about goalie pulls. Who is it doing it in Europe? It's a former NHL player, I believe. Coaching in, I believe, the German league, and he's pulling his goalie in overtime.
If it's in the German league, it's got to be is it Marco Sturm?
No. It might be a different league. I'm not sure, but
that's the only German coach I could think of was
he's pulling his goalie in overtime. His team gets possession. Their overtime is 3-on-3, and he's pulling his goalie. And he's won twice with it already this season. And I don't remember who it is.
There's a rule though, isn't there? Isn't there a rule that there's a rule like either in the NHL or in some of the professional leagues, maybe in North America, that if you got scored on by pulling your goalie, you forfeit the loser point?
Maybe. They do have that rule, I believe. He's willing to do it because 4-on-3 is just such a massive advantage. He just tells his team, play super conservatively, keep possession of the puck.
Come on. Okay, I should have known who it was. I did read this. You know who the coach is?
Yeah, who is it?
Sergei Fedorov.
It's Sergei Fedorov, right. Not the German league. Sergei Fedorov.
No, it's KHL, I believe, right? He's coaching in the KHL, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, see, he is. Yeah, it is a KHL team. I knew it was a Russian name. Obviously, I'm not crazy. It's like
there's a couple leagues in Russia though, so it's not the end of the world. So the move I'm talking about, by the way, is third period. The Flyers were down 4-1, and the Kings take a couple of penalties back to back, and the Flyers are going to end up with a 5-on-3. So the Flyers win the draw, and the first thing Mike Yeo does, 17 and a half minutes left in the period, is he gets his goalie to the bench. Sorry, he called a timeout as they were going on the 5-on-3 and drew this up. Mike Yeo gets absolute complete credit. He did this consciously. He drew this up, I imagine NBA style, like on the whiteboard. So the Flyers win the draw to take possession on the 5-on-3, and the first thing Mike Yeo does is gets Martin Jones. Martin Jones skates to the bench. Kevin Hayes jumps on, and Kevin Hayes jumps on the ice, skates directly to the back door, bang, goal. So for a minute there, the Flyers had a 6-on-3. And we're talking with 17-plus minutes left in the game, and you're down 3 goals. And that's Mike Yeo saw an opportunity to get the game within 2, within shouting distance, and they scored quickly enough that they gave themselves like a minute 40 on the second power play. They didn't do anything with it because they suck, but the call was correct in making the aggressive gamble. I love the aggressive gamble out of Mike Yeo.
Yeah, you know why? Because what do you have to lose in a 4-1 game already?
Nothing. In fact, if they score, just tell Martin Jones to stay. It's all right. We'll send the kid in. And Felix Sandstrom goes out there in the 5-1 game for the last 10 minutes.
You could have, honestly. I mean,
you probably would have. Martin Jones came off the ice and was like, all right, I'm going to the shower. Let me know if we score or not.
There was an element, to be honest, there was an element of me that was a little tiny bit surprised. Like, it's a small percentage.
That he stayed in?
That he stayed in after the second period because the fourth goal was pretty rough.
I kind of the first goal was rough too. Martin Jones did not have a great night.
Yeah, but see, here's my problem with the first and the second. That's just execution behind the net. You got to be able to pick up guys. This is where I was at with like I said. I think there's something about Ivan Provorov's game against LA that made me think his head just wasn't there this night. Like it does happen sometimes. I'm not trying to make it.
I wonder if the Kings still just know Jones pretty well because he was the Sharks goalie for so long. A lot of those guys have played Martin Jones a lot.
Well, he was with LA too for a little while, and I'm sure that.
Not a ton of guys who are still there from that era.
Enough though, because Doughty knows and Kopitar knows, and
that's fair.
And Dustin Brown didn't play, but he knows. Dustin Brown would have played. By the way, he's COVID too. So he would have played. I'm not trying to make it like he wouldn't have.
But overall, you kind of it was mostly just a poor effort against the Kings, I think. Like, you just didn't. You look like a tired team playing your third game in 4 nights.
But it never makes any sense though, because you play rough to start it. You play rough to end it. It's not I kind of laugh. Like, I laugh every time they go to these games. You're stuck watching. Obviously, I'm watching from home. I have the TV broadcast on. Every time they go to the studio, it's like they don't know what to say. Like,
Yep, they're in there like, yep, they're losing again.
No,
back to you, Jim.
I'm not even talking. I know where you're going. Like, I'm not even talking about Taron Hatcher in that sense. I'm talking about Al Morganti standing there. He's been doing this for how many years? And he almost looks like he doesn't know what to say about it. Like, I got nothing for you on this.
The man talks for a living.
Right.
And this team has him speechless.
But the man's not just talks for a living, but talks for a living, has done it for the likes of ESPN, has written, goes on the radio every morning. Like,
talks about hockey for a living a lot of the time. Talks about the Flyers for a living. It's just crazy. It's bad. We don't know where this team's going, but we do know where we're going. And that is we're going about our day, but we will return next week. I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it. What do you say, Kevin?
No, that is a good place to wrap it.
All right. Sounds good. So we'll be back next week, like I said, and you can find the show basically where you found this one. We are on YouTube. Make sure to check us out over there. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts. We're all over the place. SportsTalkPhilly.com. Make sure to follow them over there. And follow Kevin on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Follow the show at YWT Podcast. Make sure to follow at Sports Talk PHL and at Flyerdelphia. And we'll be back next week. We took our holiday break last week, and we're back to our weekly schedule for at least the near future. And Devin, anything else or?
Nah, nothing really from me.
All right, sounds good. So we'll see you later.